We've been waiting for it and it's finally here. Pumpkin everything and fall flavors, but we don't discriminate around here. We love all squashes and I am going to show you all different ways to include them in your fall eating this season. When we think about fall flavors, squash is probably the first produce item that comes to mind. Pumpkin is a squash, you know, so pumpkin spice everything, we're thinking about squash. But I want to talk about some of the other options of squash that you can integrate into your eating to get some really wonderful health benefits. The majority of squash, because of their yellow-orange color, is going to be high in both vitamin A and vitamin C, which is great for the vitamin C with immune health, and the vitamin A helps your eyesight health as well. So this is spaghetti squash, which people hear about, especially because it can be used as a substitute or an integration into spaghetti or thinner shaped pastas like linguine and angel hair if you want to lower the blood glucose content of your dish, or just add a produce item to your spaghetti. But people can be a little bit intimidated when it comes to preparing this squash. So that's what I want to show you today. So here is my biggest tip, and that is to soften the squash before you cut into it. So what I usually do is I wrap it in a damp paper towel and then do 2 to 5 minutes in the microwave to just let it soften up. Then you just want to have a knife that you are comfortable with, preferably one that is sharp enough because obviously you have to get through the thick skin of the squash. I actually like to use my bread knife for this because I like when it's longer and I have a little bit more movement. But I'm telling you, if you soften it, it really does help. So that gives me the leverage. And I already started it a little, kind of going in there, getting that groove in just gives you a place to carve. And then you just go right in and cut it through. Do not worry if it is uneven, that's okay. It just might mean that when you cook it in the oven, one side might get a little bit softer than the other. Maybe you'll remove it, but it's, you know, don't drive yourself crazy. And then when it comes to the seeds, you can cook it with the seeds in there because just like pumpkin seeds, squash seeds are something that you could toast and you could include it. But otherwise, just kind of dig them out a little bit. Just like any of your squashes, just like when you do this with your kids for carving pumpkins, it could be a fun way to get them involved. And you will see that just by microwaving it, you started to get that spaghetti look, and that's where it gets its name. You start to get those strands. So after you dig it out, all you have to do, because one of the nice things with squash is it has so much flavor on its own, so you don't necessarily have to go crazy with seasoning. So all I'm doing, and you could use an olive oil spray, I'm just drizzling a little bit of olive oil on the top half of my squash, about a tablespoon, and then just seasoning it with a little bit of salt and pepper. And that's plenty. And then what you're going to do is bake it cut side down on your baking sheet for about 35 to 45 minutes at around 350 to 375. Then you just want to check it for that caramelization. I'm going to bring over my done one, move this out of the way, and bring over my finished one. One more thing I forgot to mention, and this would be a little bit of a problem for the microwave. Before you put it in the oven, if you're not going to soften it beforehand, or before you put it in the microwave, if you are going to soften it beforehand, make sure to take your fork and to put some holes in the outside so that that steam can circulate. Again, whether you are putting it in the microwave beforehand or for the oven. That is important, just like you do it with sweet potatoes and potatoes. All right, so now we have our butternut squash all cooked, and you can see that caramelization. That's what makes it such a nice item, a nice produce item for so much flavor and sweetness. You can also, if you want to amplify that, you can use cinnamon, you can use a pumpkin pie spice if you are just gonna eat it on the side and not integrate it into a more savory dish. But once you have that spaghetti squash cooked, all you do is just scrape it. And all of this is your flesh of the squash. So you wanna make sure you're getting in there and really getting all of the spaghetti squash out, because even the rectangle, you see that here on the side, if I go in there with the fork, it turns into those lovely strands. And the other fun thing that if you are good at cutting your spaghetti squash nice and evenly, and you're not just digging the inside out, it really works nicely to serve in the spaghetti squash itself. So you could add, your sauce that maybe you make on the side and just add it right on top, or, just dig it out and mix it in with your spaghetti. So super simple, again, whether you're just using it as a side dish or whether you want to integrate it into some of your spaghetti dishes. But either way you do it, it's a great way to get some added nutrients, to get some added fiber, and to potentially make it a more diabetic-friendly dish. Don't tell the other squashes, but Acorn is my favorite. Not because it tastes that different, but because it's so much easier, in my opinion, to prep than your spaghetti squash and your butternut squash. It's a lot smaller, but it still has that heft and that flavor that you want from something like a butternut squash. So the way that I typically go about it is I cut the top off so that I have a nice base. You can also use this as a flour stamper with your kids if you want to get super creative and reuse. And then you're just going to cut it in half. You'll end up with this. You dig out those seeds on the inside, and then you just cut along the grooves. So the grooves in this, you can see, it's very similar to your pumpkins, and it gives you that really nice sort of template for where you're going to cut along. And if you want to, if this is a little bit too thick, you could go in the middle and cut it in half. But you have these really beautiful then slices, which I think works so nicely, as a side dish, or as a really nice vegetable to put on top of a salad, which is what I'm going to make with the ones that I already air fried. That's right, this is such a wonderful squash to do in the air fryer. All you need to do is give it a spray. You really don't need any more seasoning than that. 10 to 15 minutes at 400 degrees, and you get that nice caramelization. You want it to look soft, you want that brown, because that is going to be all of that flavor. And again, it cooks a lot quicker than your spaghetti squashes and your butternut squashes too, because it's thick, but it's not as thick. So that's why it's definitely my favorite. So I'm gonna put those aside for a second while we assemble our jeweled farro and squash salad. So I already have the farro cooked. Now farro is not a gluten-free grain. You could easily make this with brown rice or quinoa if you wanted to make this gluten-free. So I'm gonna add a lot of really nutritious things and a lot of really filling things to this salad. So I have over here some pistachios and some sliced almonds that I am toasting up. Anytime you do a nut in a salad, I really recommend just giving it a couple of minutes on the stovetop, because it really brings out those flavors. And especially when you're pairing it with the squash, that deep nuttiness compared with the sweet of the squash, it just really adds a nice flavor balance. So I have some here that I already toasted. We're going to put those in. And then to really play up that sweetness and to add some fall colors and to get that jeweled name in our jeweled farro salad, I have some pomegranate seeds and I have some golden raisins. So I'm gonna put those in there as well. And again, not much prep other than doing the squash and cooking your grain of choice. And then I'm going to just toss in some of our organic balsamic vinegar dressing. I just think balsamic goes really nicely with all of that fall produce. I think it plays well with any sweet ingredients you're using in a salad, since that balsamic does have a certain sweetness to it. You can even find it sometimes, you could do balsamic and berries and put that on a dessert, and it's a nice play on that. I'm gonna throw a really fancy cooking word at you. Agrodolce, it means sour and sweet, and that's a nice play that you get with this salad. All right, so let's plate it up now with our squash on top. Because that butternut squash is really the star of the show here, that's why I didn't mix it in with the dressing, because I really just want it to kind of shine on its own. All right, so I'm just gonna plate this. And then you can, depending on, you can get like a little heart. It'd be really cute with that. All righty. And there you have, this is a great, especially if you're making it for maybe the holidays and you use one of those gluten-free greens, this is a really nice substitute side dish to your stuffing if that isn't gluten-free. And it's got a lot of filling and nutritious things in it. So I hope you enjoy, and I hope you like acorn squash as much as I do. Pumpkin is a great ingredient to use in desserts because it's a way to get more fiber and vitamin A and C into your sweet treats. So I am making these mini pumpkin pies, which are also wonderful for health and wellness because they are automatically portion controlled. So let's start by making the pumpkin pie filling, starting with a can of pumpkin, which is obviously a key ingredient to this, but just such a wonderful ingredient in the fall. I love using pumpkin puree to make savory stuff like soups and even Alfredo sauce. We have some great recipes for savory pumpkin on our recipe shop, so make sure you check that out if you are a pumpkin fan. Then we have 1 1/4 cups of evaporated milk, 2 eggs. This is about 1/3 cup if you're using the egg substitute. 3/4 cups of organic cane sugar. I'm using our Wholesome Pantry brand. Now, if you want to make this even better for you, and maybe you're someone who's suffering with diabetes or managing diabetes, then you can use our Wholesome Pantry stevia, 3/4 cup, and that way you're making it a sugar-free dessert. Then almost forgot, very important. Everyone, I think, well, kids, a lot of times they think if they go into that can of pure pumpkin that it's gonna taste like a pumpkin pie or that pumpkin spice flavor they know. Little do they know that pumpkin spice flavor comes from that pumpkin pie spice. If you want anything to taste like pumpkin, that is the secret, is that pumpkin pie spice. So about 1.5 teaspoons of that. I tend to go a little heavy-handed always with the pumpkin pie spice, just because I know that is where that flavor is coming from. Plus, pumpkin pie spice has that cinnamon in it, which is also good for blood glucose control. If we're using that stevia and making it a diabetic friendly, then that is a great way also to add some benefits. All right, so we wanna mix that up. We do have eggs in here, so we are aerating it with that whisking. Okay, I'm gonna put the filling aside just for a second. I have in the freezer section, I found these little mini pie crusts. So they're already perforated. Now, if you have just a regular pie crust that you're going with, all you have to do is take a container, take a lid, and you can just use that as a cookie cutter and make a circle out of it. You can cook it in muffin tins, or you can just kind of use this to shape it. And then you're going to place them and cook them first at 375 for about 10 minutes. You wanna undercook them just a little bit because they are gonna go back in the oven with the filling. So once you have them, they're going to look like this. So you have these great little mini pie crusts. And then you're just going to, I'm gonna actually use my evaporated milk. I like to double duty a lot of my kitchen items. Makes for less of a mess. And you're just gonna pour it in. Now, here's my little tip. If you don't want to do this as a baked dessert and keep it no bake, then all you have to do is, instead of using the evaporated milk and the sugar, you're going to substitute it with 1.5 cups of milk of your choice. You could use a dairy-free milk and make this dessert dairy-free, and then use a package of instant pudding, whether you do a sugar-free vanilla or a regular vanilla. Then you can just mix it up and the filling will be ready to go and you don't have to bake it. So then if you go the route that I showed you though, then you're gonna bake it for 10 to 12 minutes at 350 degrees. And then you end up with these perfect little pies, which we must top them with some whipped cream. And wait till you see how cute these look. Perfect. So here are our mini pumpkin pies, full of that delicious vitamin A and C, and able to be substituted to make it into a diabetic-friendly dessert. If you like these recipes, like and follow for more.